Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to another market recap. Now, there's been a lot going on in the RuneScape economy this month. Next week, we're likely going to get a new reward blog for Raids 3, which is pretty big as far as the impact it's been having. We don't really know what's in that yet, but with a new raid coming in the semi-near future, the end of leagues coming up, and other bigger updates, there's just a lot going on in the RuneScape market. As always, if you do enjoy these types of videos, always appreciate you liking them. Helps a ton. Anyway, let's get started. Okay, so let's start off with what I think is one of the more interesting stories this month, and that would be the upcoming Raids 3 reward blog. As far as we know, this is going to be a revision of the old blog, so some things might be changed and others might be ditched entirely. Now, at this point, it seems likely that it is coming next week, and that is based on a Q&A that happened just a few days ago where they mentioned that the blog will most likely be out next week. Now, people are speculating very heavily on what is going to be in it because there's a bit of an assumption that there are going to be some significant changes. There was a lot of feedback on the old rewards, and it seems likely that there could be some entirely new items or some of the existing ones could be changed dramatically. So how exactly is that affecting item prices? Well, let's start off with some of the more obvious ones. First up here, we have the Arcane Sigil. Now, the Arcane Sigil was directly mentioned in the original reward blog. I don't know if you remember back when that came out. Arcane Sigils jumped, I think someone bought one literally for 400 mil, which was, I think, a big mistake, but who knows. Now, Arcane Sigils are going up. I mean, this month they've gone up about 30 mil. Essentially, if the new item, the Elidness Ward, doesn't get changed at all and still requires an Arcane Sigil, then this will probably continue to go up, otherwise it'll most likely crash. Now, the next category of items that are being affected isn't really one specifically, but Crush items as a whole. Now, there's a bit of a rumor that Crush is actually going to be one of the more preferred combat styles at Raids 3. Now, I don't know if this is based on any substantial information or people just assume Desert, Bugs, weak to Crush. There may have potentially been a few minor hints at it, but nothing concrete or official. That said, even that level of information is enough to bump up one of the most expensive Crush weapons, that being the Inquisitor's Mace, from around 300 mil up to 350 just in a couple of weeks, which is significant. And a few other Crush weapons have gone up a fair bit, the Elder Maul going up 10-20%, but realistically there aren't that many other Crush weapons that would likely be useful in raids. Now, with not that much known about Raids 3, there's a lot of items that could be going up due to some upcoming information. For example, just very standard items like the Twistabout could be going up. I mean, it already jumped up 15 mil today. The Dragon Hunter Lance, I mean, that has been useful in other raids. It could see some use in Raids 3. I have no idea though, that's just a random item going up 2 or 3 mil just this week. But I'm not really going to speculate on that too much because we just don't really have enough information for that. Alright, so another really interesting update that came out this month is the Remnant Maledictus. So the Remnant Boss came out early February, and it did have a pretty significant effect on a few specific items, those being the Revenant weapons. For example, here's the Vigor's Chain Mace going from 6.5 mil up to a peak of almost 10 mil, before very rapidly dropping the day of the release, and since then continuing to crash. So obviously there was some significant speculation that the Remnant Boss would be worthwhile to kill. That said, after the release, players soon figured out that it was fairly lackluster and definitely not a game changer by any means, which means quickly after, the prices crashed. Now for the crossbow, something similar happened, but not as significant. It just crashed from 28 mil down to 26 mil, so not that much. And the Thamron Scepter, same deal. It crashed when the content released, but since then has actually remained pretty consistent. So that kind of begs the question, why did the Vigoras crash so much more? Now my best guess is a while ago when the Revenant change and Revenant update was proposed, they mentioned in their blog that they were going to make certain Revenants weaker to certain attack styles. And I think a lot of people thought that it would be in February 2nd's update, which would make the Vigoras actually probably a very strong weapon. And it could actually compete with the crossbow depending on which Revenants were weak to what. So I think there was some speculation on that, but since that didn't end up getting added, crashed significantly. The Thamrons, yeah, sure, some things might be weak to magic, but the Thamron still has other issues that would probably inhibit it from being a top tier weapon. So next up here, I think we need to talk about next items. Now, I know we've talked about these a couple times in the last month or two, but it's still really interesting that not only have they held their value, but they've actually been trending upwards. Now that's fairly uncommon for new PVM items because the boss normally gets farmed heavily and the prices drop, but that isn't happening as much. Now, whether it's because people just aren't killing necks that much, or because the items are so rare, or other factors entirely, we've actually seen continued growth in the necks items. Probably the biggest change this week is actually to the Torva plate body. This item's gone up nearly 100 mil since February 8th, and this week alone up around 50 mil. That's a significant increase. Torva plate body is now 500 mil, where after the initial crash it was around 300 mil. Now if we look at the Torva plate legs, they are also up around 120 mil on the month, which is pretty insane as well. And the full helm's still up over around 60 mil. Moving on here, we have the Zerite crossbow, which has continued to trend up this month as well, going up around 100 mil this month, which is very significant. And yeah, if we actually go look at the OSRS wiki, Nex is listed at a profit per hour of 12 mil, which is actually up since the last time I checked. So it's still incredibly profitable, but the prices are actually going up, which is pretty interesting. And finally, another item I wanted to look at, the Spectral, is actually up to around 100 mil as of today. So if you look back when Nex was released, it dropped down to 67 mil, but has slowly been clawing its way back up. So it really does seem that the Nex rewards are either so uncommon and the fight so long that there's just a bottleneck on supply, or for whatever reason, people just aren't killing Nex that much, either because the boss is boring, which you could make an argument for that, or potentially everyone's just playing leagues. Now, one thing I've been meaning to do a bit more often is actually have a look at resource items a bit, because those are also really important, and I tend to look more at PVM items and new items, but there are some pretty interesting trends happening in some of the cheaper resource items. For example, prayer potions, we've seen a massive increase recently. Pre-Nex, they were around 10k each, and afterwards, now they're up to 13k. And I would say this is definitely due to Nex. Nex requires a ton of prayer potions, more specifically super restores. So super restores have jumped up a lot, we've already touched on that, and they are currently still at around 15k, which means they're significantly more expensive than prayer potions. Now previous to this, they were actually pretty similar in price. For example, we jump back to November, a super restore was 10,000 and a prayer potion was around 9,500, roughly the same price. But now that super restores are much more expensive, that has kind of pushed the price of prayer up in general, as while previously people would split between the two of these. Now if somebody wants prayer for their Slayer task, they're going to buy a prayer potion, and so is everybody else, which has caused more demand and has pushed up the price. So prayer right now is very expensive, except for one potion, and that would be the Ancient Brew. Now the Ancient Brew potion, extremely cheap right now. Now this is a new potion that was released with the next update, and I was very curious to see where this would end up. Now I'm pretty sure this potion is destined to be pretty well dirt cheap for one main reason. It is now the best prayer training method in the game, assuming you don't tick manipulate. It's actually better than just AFK making Saradomin brews, which means people who want the highest experience rate are gonna make this potion and dump thousands of them into the Grand Exchange. Now one really interesting trend I've been looking at over the last couple of months is gold ore. Now a year ago, gold ore was really cheap at around 140 GP, but this has gone up a lot. If we go back even further than that, it's recovered significantly back to where it had normally been for quite a few years. So it peaked all the way up at 300 GP and now is falling again, but this is the highest we've seen gold ore in a long time. But also other fairly expensive resource training methods have gone up a lot as well. For example, Chinchompas just a few months ago were so cheap. Red Chinchompas bottomed out at 755 GP, which is insane. And Black Jin's doing something fairly similar, 1800, but they've gone up a lot since then. A similar story with Dragon Bones, those have been going up all the way until January, where they've started to go back down again. Now, I'm not really sure what the cause of this is. It really could just boil down to people wanting to level their stats up for new content for Raids 3, the anti-cheating team could be doing a better job. Who knows? But it is really interesting to see how much that trend is reversed in 2021. Now finally here, one thing I haven't looked at in a while is bonds. Now, I forgot to check them around Christmas time, so we're gonna go have a look now. The highest they ended up getting was 6 mil, which is actually cheaper than the previous year. If we go back to the all-time view, this has broken a fairly consistent seasonal trend that every November, December, bonds would hit a new high. So in 2019, they got up to 5.6 mil. In 2020, they got up to 6.3 mil, and this year, nothing. So are bonds going to stagnate at like 4 to 5 mil forever now, or was that just a one-off year? Next year, will they hit maybe 8 mil? We'll have to wait and see on that one. But anyway, that is going to be it for the market recap. I hope you guys enjoyed it as always. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Now, before I go here, I want to give a giant thank you to all of my members over on YouTube. Thank you so much to The Hybrid, Alejandra, Sizwani's Flail, and Kush Patel for all being subscribed to the Dragon tier. You guys are awesome. Thanks so much. Also, a big thank you to Cadell Studio Gaming, Locustiz, Mexos, Basetitch, NDM001, and YoYoSub89 for also being subscribed at the Evernight tier. Appreciate it a lot. As always, if you're looking for another way to support the channel, becoming a YouTube member is an awesome way to do so. You will become immortalized in all of my future videos, get a custom role in my Discord server, and access to my video release schedule. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.